Hey, welcome to Coffee with Mom and Dad. My name is Todd, and I'm Dad, of course, and this is my wife Valerie. She's
Hello.
Mom. Today we're having some technical difficulties, so we're broadcasting from a computer,
A
but
webcam
yeah,
on a
webcam.
computer.
Okay, and we're doing something a little bit different this year. We in the past we've done things a little bit odd, kind of changed things up a little bit once in a while, and
Do some
usually
different
we
stuff.
do shocking news with Mom and Dad first.
Not today.
But not today.
We'll
We're
give that a rest for a while.
we're doing a series on the informed capitalist, and it's just basically a series telling you why I believe in capitalism. And one of the reasons we're doing this is because there is an overwhelming amount of people in our society today that have fallen into socialism and don't realize it. There's an overwhelming amount of people today that are socialists and don't know it because they don't know what socialism is, and they don't understand what capitalism is, and they don't understand why capitalism. So we're doing just a brief study on that as a couple and discussing some things about capitalism. And one of the things that we're discussing right now is we're discussing the difference between in a competitive wage or a company that's run by the owner of the company rather than labor unions. You got to realize that socialism is it's a system that tries to be fair to everybody rather than just.
And there's a difference.
There is a difference. There's a big difference. And so what we're doing is we're just kind of looking at what we believe about capitalism and stuff. And a lot of folks, honey, they believe in capitalism because, well, it's the ideal of the founding fathers, as far as our country goes. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, men like that. But they don't really understand that a lot of the precepts and things that these men believed, while they may not have been, like Thomas Jefferson obviously wasn't a Christian, but he got his ideals from Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
He got his ideas from the Bible and from men who knew God. So, for example, Patrick Henry was obviously a Christian. Mm-hmm. And by the way, if you don't know this, Patrick Henry was the one who pushed for the Bill of Rights because he felt things would not be fair to everybody in this of rights for it. So he pushed for the Bill of Rights.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that you're talking about how the Bible was a prevalent influence, and even the Declaration of Independence is one of them. I was being told had a lot of scripture quotes in it.
Yeah.
And now we've so many people try to push the Bible out of society that people their mindset is formed around worldly opinions or even satanic opinions, and sometimes people think it's Christian. But a while back, and I had mentioned this, and I think it was our first episode, we talked about socialism.
Mm-hmm.
And for years, my husband has been saying that we have that these different programs are socialist programs, like Social Security was meant to be temporary. There's so many programs that were set up to be temporary or were just flat socialist programs, and everybody denied it and argued and got mad. And a while back, we were debating with somebody on the internet, and they said, "What are you talking about? We've been socialist. This country's been socialist for years."
Yeah.
Which is what he's been saying.
Yeah.
And we didn't even see it. We were so mad at the idea that we didn't even see it as a country, that's exactly what we were already doing.
Yeah. Kind of do what I used to do with my kids. Mm-hmm. When our children were younger, one of the things that we would do is we would just sit around, we'd read some of the Bible, and then we would discuss it. And so that's kind of what I want to do. I know, y'all have Bibles at home, and you don't really need somebody to babysit you as far as devotions and all that stuff, and learning of the Bible. But I just want to talk about the difference between a minimum wage and a um, help me out.
Minimum wage and a
I just went spacey. Competitive wage.
Yeah, thanks.
and an owner-run company rather than a labor union-run company. So we're going to start here in Matthew chapter 20, and if you want to open your Bible at home and come alongside of us, you're welcome to. I'm just going to read a few verses here, and we'll discuss it. And we're not going to really take all that long because I understand you got things you need to do.
Today.
But
sorry, I'm so distracted. I'm like, maybe this little thing in front of me is a bad idea. I know. So I can either look really weird the whole time and not know, or fiddle with my hair. Sorry.
So we're in Matthew chapter 20, and the Bible says, "For the kingdom of heaven is like unto a man that is a householder, which went out early in the morning to hire laborers into his vineyard. And when he had agreed with the laborers for a penny a day, he sent them into his vineyard. And he went out about the third hour, and saw others standing idle in the marketplace, and said unto them, Go ye also into the vineyard, and whatsoever is right I will give you. And they went their way. Again he went out about the sixth and the ninth hour, and did likewise. About the 11th hour he went out, and found others standing idle, and saith unto them, Why stand ye here all the day idle? They say unto him, Because no man hath hired us. He saith unto them, Go ye also into the vineyard, and whatsoever is right, that shall ye receive. So when even was come, the Lord of the vineyard saith unto his steward, Call the laborers, and give them their hire, beginning from the last unto the first. And when they came that were hired about the 11th hour, they received every man a penny. But when the first came, they supposed that they should have received more. And they likewise received every man a penny. And when they had received it, they murmured against the good man of the house, saying, These last have wrought but 1 hour, and thou hast made even full unto us, which have borne the burden and heat of the day. But he answered one of them and said, Friend, I do thee no wrong. Dost not thou agree with me for a penny? Take that thine is, and go thy way. I will give unto this last, even as unto thee. Is it not lawful for me to do what I will with mine own? Is thine eye evil because I am good? So the last shall be first, and the first last. For many be called, but few chosen." I want to talk about the principle that's in this verse. Obviously it's talking about the kingdom of heaven and some principles that God lays forth. But one of the things that he does here is he has a steward who goes out and he hires laborers several times a day. And the first set of laborers that he hires, he agrees with them for a penny for the day.
Didn't the last time he hire himself? This over and over again, and I don't know.
No.
Okay.
No, well, he
I figured
he does.
The last set, the ones he said, "What are you doing standing here?" That
well,
wasn't him. Or was
he goes to several people and says, "What are you doing standing here idle?"
Okay. That's not part of it.
The point is, the first set, he says, "I'll give you a penny," and then the next several sets, he says, "I'll give you that which is right."
Yeah.
And so at the end, when it comes time to pay everybody, he begins with the last. And he pays them a penny, which all he told them was that he would do what was right for them, give them what was right. And then he gives the first a penny. And the first set of laborers they've been out in the field all day long, working in the heat. And they get the same pay that the last get. And so they get frustrated and they say, "Hey, we've been out in this field all day."
Yeah, they've been out for 1 hour.
Why in the world, and I'm paraphrasing, why in the world do these guys get more money or the equivalent?
I should have had that coffee. Go ahead.
Why do they get the equivalent of what we're getting if we've been out in the field all day long? I often see labor unions and all that stuff. They want certain rights for people who've been with a company for a long time, and they think that somebody who's been with a company for a long time should get more pay than somebody who hasn't. But let me tell you something. Somebody's been with a company for a long time, and they've learned or they figured out how to work the system and made it real difficult for that company to fire them when they decide they're not going to work anymore, or they decide that they're going to just do the bare minimum. And then somebody else comes along and they work real hard and they do their job and they go over and above and they end up working equal or, getting equal pay. Let me tell you something. That is a boss's right to give somebody equal pay, especially if he's doing more work. It is his right to give more pay. So, I just want to touch some things on this. First of all, I want to tell you that Jesus calls this man the good man in Matthew 20, verse 11. This is a good man. Okay, he's a just man in the fact that he's good. And he says in Matthew 20, verse 13, he says, "I do thee no wrong." Not doing you any wrong. We made an agreement. I've kept my part of the agreement. And then here in verse 4 and verse 7 of chapter 20, he says he's going to give them what's right. And I don't know, hon. What do you think? Are you with me?
Kind of. I'm wanting a cough
She's
drop.
tired.
Something. I can't stop yawning or playing with my hair. I'm so sorry.
Stay focused.
Well, we've been talking about this, and some of the things that I noticed are they weren't complaining until they saw what the other guys got, and that's just sheer covetous.
It is.
And my husband was telling me that what he was paying them, penny was a day's wages. I mean, it's what you needed to survive for the day. So not only were these people not happy because these other people, they were happy with what they got until they found out the other people they got the same. Then they were not content. I mean, this is money they didn't have yesterday, and not only were they upset about that, but they would have been more content had these people not gotten enough to make it for the day, and that's twisted.
I knew some women that were at a workplace, and one of the women,
I'm getting a cough drop.
She found $100 on the floor.
Oh.
And they all got this money, and if you're gonna do it, make the noise and be done with it, okay?
I'm sorry. I'm trying not to make much noise. It's just not working. All right, go ahead. I'm not feeling well. Go ahead.
They
I love you.
So anyway, they found this $100, and these other two women wanted her to split it with them. Well, I got this story secondhand. I have no clue what really happened. But I do know this.
Yeah, they came at him.
That they decided that they were going to bring the story to me. Okay? And what do you think? What do you think? And I'm thinking about this. And, the woman that, first of all, the woman that found the $100 legitimately found the $100. The other two women wanted the part of the $100 and were mad that the woman didn't give them part of the $100. But when the woman was confronted and found out that she might have to give them money, she said, you know what? It might be wise just to give it to the manager of the company so that he can figure out what to do with it.
Yep.
It's left on the floor. It wasn't hers. It wasn't the other two women's. But listen, if somebody doesn't come back and claim that $100, who gets the $100? Every employee? Not every employee found it. More so, who has the right to decide who gets that money? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just because one person finds money doesn't mean that they have to split it with everybody around them who didn't find it.
Yeah.
And you know, it's off. I get a laugh out of this thing. You know, years ago I worked on a roofing company, and there was this guy that'd been working there for a long time. And I guess this is what I'm trying to say.
I'll be honest, I've never heard of anything like that. I've never heard.
I was younger than this guy, and I didn't go out to the bar at night and party. I was in good shape. Still am. I was in really good shape, and I worked circles around the guy. To be honest with you, he had more experience than me. He was better than me, but he didn't apply himself. And one day we went to work, and the foreman decided he was going to harass him by telling this guy that I was making a certain amount, which was the same amount that he was making. And when the guy heard that I was making the same amount that he was making, he said, "Oh, okay." It didn't bother him any. And the reason is because he understood that I was working a whole lot harder than he was, and I was able to apply myself. Now, oftentimes, people get uptight and angry because somebody's making more, when in all reality, their only business is how much they're making. And all they need to understand is why they're not making more. They don't need to be looking at the other person saying, "He's not worth all that." Well, you're not paying him, so you don't have the right to define whether he's worth $15 an hour or $10 an hour. Now,
that's kind of funny because, you know, one of the reasons why they try and do a lot of this stuff because they talk about, you know, I mean, growing up in public school, you're taught all the unfair paying and hiring practices, paying your buddies more and, you know, men more and all this stuff. But, you know, financially, does that really make sense? Wouldn't you be cutting your throat if you did that instead of paying more for the person who is producing more? Won't your business get further that way by keeping people and actually encouraging some competition for better work by giving them more pay? I mean, wouldn't the person who was doing that actually pay for it?
Now, we're kind of discussing the difference between a competitive wage and a minimum wage. And one of the reasons that
wouldn't a competitive wage be a better way to run a business?
It would.
I mean, you know, people always complain. I don't think everybody did it that way, but that's what they taught us.
You know, it's better to give a competitive wage and allow people to compete than it is to give a minimum wage. And I know, you know, the history of a minimum wage was that people were not getting a fair wage. They were not getting a decent wage to survive. You'll notice here in this text, and there does need to be some kind of regulation that says, okay, you need to give a fair wage. You need to give something that's going to be enough that a person can survive off of so he doesn't become a slave.
Yeah, if you're talking about having safe working conditions, that's important.
Yeah.
You know, but that's not what this is about.
But the thing is that when labor unions begin to govern companies, that's no. I'm sorry, I don't agree with that. That's wrong. Okay? Labor unions should not have the right to govern a company. No. And, you know, we were looking just a while back, you know, they were saying that they wanted to raise the wage of McDonald's. And, you know, they wanted to raise the wage of McDonald's to like $15 an hour. And I don't think people understand that what's going to happen when they do that.
I'm going to get some footage of the new McDonald's I just put up down here in Fort Worth.
We've already got it.
You got it? Yeah. We're gonna put that on our page. I don't know if we'll link it below. Obviously not today, but we will link it below. We've got some footage of McDonald's they just put up here.
Yeah.
No more waiters.
Yep.
Cut their staff.
You know, see, man's a higher minimum wage in this world where big business can simply just upgrade. They don't need to employ you. They've got computers and robots. And if they can get you as a consumer to come in and push buttons and make your order, they don't need to hire you. You know, look at Walmart. You go to the Walmart checkout center, you go through self-checkout. They've already eliminated a bunch of employees.
I heard something very interesting about that.
Within 20 or 30 years, you're probably not even going to see a cashier at Walmart. Matter of fact, if you have a job at Walmart, all you may be doing is going through a warehouse, picking up products to bring outside because somebody called in and, asked for the product. I mean, things are changing, and one of the reasons they're changing is because big business cannot afford to pay little old you the money that you're demanding.
Can I tell you this now?
Okay.
I heard something about that. I don't even remember where it was. Probably on YouTube. They were talking about how we are now paying to bag our own stuff.
Uh-huh.
Basically, we're paying the same amount of money, but we're getting less service. We are now doing free labor for Walmart. They said they did the same thing with gas stations. You remember when gas stations used to be service?
Yeah.
They come out and do the service. Well, then they started having self-serve pumps, and that gas was cheaper.
Yeah.
And then they had the regular service, and that now they don't have. Once they got people used to that, and they were paying, they were getting a little discount. Then they stopped having service stations at all, and the gas prices went back to normal. Now you pay the same amount, and you pump your own gas.
Yeah.
You're paying. You're paying them. You're working for free.
Yep.
They've got you working for free for them, and they were saying that that's going to happen if we keep going to these. They say that it's quicker. You get in and out quicker, and it seems like it, but they said really it's not. You aren't getting in and out any quicker by doing it yourself. And eventually, they're going to phase out cashiers once they've got us all used to it.
Yeah.
Once our training is done, they will get rid of them.
Yeah. And so what we're talking about, and we're talking about the text here in Matthew 20, and it's obvious from the text when Jesus is talking about the kingdom of heaven that he doesn't agree with paying everybody the same wage or paying the wage that somebody demands rather than the wage that is right. And we see here several times where this good man says, I'll give you what is right. Now, the other man, the people that were demanding more, he says in the text, he says that they have an evil eye. The Bible talks about an evil eye in Matthew chapter 6, verse 23. It talks about people who have a desire for money or treasures, more. I've got to have more. Was it Henry Ford when he made his first million? One of those guys, he made a million, and somebody asked him what he wanted now that he became a millionaire, and he said another million. We've always got to have more. We've got to have the next bigger toy. We've got to have, we've got to have a new, nicer coat. We've got to have more. And in all reality, this man with an evil eye, or these people with an evil eye, they would have been perfectly content if the guy would have handed the person who was hired the 11th hour an apple and said, go home. As long as the person didn't make as much as they did.
Yeah, they would have been happy.
Why do you care if somebody does less work and makes just as much money as you do? Why in the world do you care? If you were hired to clean out toilets all day long, and Joe Blow was hired to go over and pick his nose all day long, and he makes the same amount of money as you do for it, why in the world do you care? You do what you do to the glory of God, and you worry about you, and you let him worry about you. It may be that you don't know how to pick your nose right, and the other guy does, and he gets paid for it.
Well, so that's the beauty of a free market society. If you don't like it, you can quit and go somewhere else, and go somewhere where they're going to pay you for your work.
But don't.
Huh?
If it's not regulated by the state.
Yeah.
Then that's social.
I said a free market.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like a free market society, you quit, you go somewhere else that's actually going to run better. Because really, how much longer is a business going to go if they pay people to not work right? You better get out of there anyway instead of whining about it.
The good man in this text in Matthew chapter 20, he says in verse 15, he says he does what is lawful. And when he's talking about lawful, he's not talking about according to Roman law or anything like that. He's talking about biblical law.
Mm-hmm.
He does what is lawful with what is his. There's nothing wrong with somebody doing what is lawful with what is theirs,
Yeah.
and what is right with what is theirs. Now there does need to be some regulation that says, hey, you don't hire people, put them in a slum, and never give them enough wages to get out.
Yeah.
But at the same point, you can't sit there and allow the workers to be the boss. And, listen, if you don't like the wages that somebody else is paying you, I promise you, there's somebody else out there who is willing to pay you a higher wage if your demand for a higher wage, or you're going to their company for a higher wage, will cause their competitor to lose business or collapse altogether.
You gotta explain to them the difference between fair and just.
Well, there is a big difference. Fair is getting what, everybody getting
Same.
an equal portion. Just is people getting what is needed. And oftentimes people don't need the same thing. But
Like if you have children,
Yeah.
know, when you have 4 children, you go out to shop for Christmas, you're not going to buy all of them lace underwear. You got 3 boys and a girl, you're going to get, you're going to get each child what it is they need. We had 4 children, every one of them very different. By the way, I wanted to show this.
Oh, okay.
This is my husband got this from his oldest daughter
My oldest
for Christmas.
daughter got that for me. It's kind of
And
cool.
that's her. And it's Dee. And our son, our the producer that runs the studio. Actually, whatever. Anyways, the guy that's run the studio. And it's our younger daughter and our youngest son. And a little note from his daughter here. But I just thought this adorable, so I wanted to show this. His dad cut from his oldest daughter. But, they're all very different. They all needed something different. And sometimes they would get jealous because they would see us doing one thing with one child, one with another. And the same child who was jealous, those other child were jealous about that one. But because you can't treat them all the same. Because if you treat every child exactly the same, nobody gets what they need.
Yeah.
Maybe one kid
Everybody's
once in a while.
treated fair, but they don't get what they need.
Yeah. Like I said, if you got 3 kids, if you got one kid who needs socks, you get all the kids socks. Well, that one kid, that's great. The other ones are like,
Why do
I got 80 pairs of this. What? I need shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the reality is,
Parents are different.
you want to be sensitive to what is needed rather than, just buying across the board.
Yeah.
Anyway, we said all
Probably
this
gonna make a
just to
better one. I just can't think of them
basically
right now.
state a couple things. According to this parable that Jesus speaks, no, it's not right for people to try to build labor unions and try to run somebody else's business. No, it's not right for people to be covetous over somebody else's wage, or choose not to be content with what they get because somebody else is making just as much. I see that all the time in the workplace.
I'm not saying that everything that the labor union does is wrong, but this part is unbiblical. I mean, we have a friend who was.
I was up in Wisconsin when Scott Walker was battling some of the labor unions up there.
I was going to say a good one real quick.
And
I was going to say a good one real quick. It was somebody that we know who was falsely accused at work of something that, if you know the person, it's absolutely ridiculous to even think this. And her labor union, she's back at work now. Her labor union took care of it for her. So that was a good thing. But this, what he's talking about, it's garbage.
Was I speaking?
Scott Walker. Well, I was trying to explain this, and you started talking about Scott Walker out of the blue.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, so we were up in Wisconsin, and this whole thing with Scott Walker was going on. And I'm a preacher, man. If I see a crowd and I think I can preach and find a way to preach to them, I'm gonna.
It was our anniversary too.
I got out there. It was right around our anniversary, and I got out there and I started preaching. And
I thought you were talking about what we saw on TV.
One of these teachers that were marching, says, I only make $45,000 a year, and if I have to pay for my health insurance, I won't be able to afford it. And I said, you think the guy across the street, there was a grocery store across the street. I said, you think the guy across the street doesn't have to pay for his own insurance? That guy bagging groceries doesn't have to? You
Not
know,
make nearly that much.
and he's like, well, he makes more than I do. I said, you really think that a guy bagging groceries makes more than $45,000 a year?
That's crazy.
But he's all complaining because he had to pay for his own insurance. And meantime, the fact that he wasn't paying for his insurance was causing the state of Wisconsin to go bankrupt, and they were all up in arms. And but it was comical because then they did a recall. They tried to get rid of Scott Walker, and Obama, you lost.
Oh yeah.
You lost.
Yeah, and he had no business doing that, none at all.
And he was involved with it, but it was the powers that be, and Scott Walker,
his groups.
He's just a good governor. But he just decided to stand up for what he believed was right and do what was right. And if everybody else and their dog is paying for their insurance, listen, if you're at a job where you don't have to, praise God, I'm all for it. But if your employer says, hey, you have to start paying for your insurance, you have to start paying for your insurance, if you're going to keep it.
I guess I feel worse for them if they teach such garbage in the schools.
Listen, we put way too high of a value on ourselves. And the reality is that we need, if we're going to have a competitive market in this country, it needs to be a free market. It needs to be a market where companies and small business can grow. And small business cannot grow when it's bullied by labor unions and when it's bullied by the government to raise a minimum wage so that some pot smoking kid in high school can make $15-20 an hour working at a McDonald's, or he can't find a job because McDonald's said, oh, really? Well, we're going to build kiosks and employ 3 or 4 cooks, and we're not going to have any cashiers except for one because we can get away with it.
Yeah.
Hey, can I tell you something? Y'all better figure something else out because big business has our number. And if they can't afford to pay you, they'll build a machine that'll do the job.
19 years ago, when Earl was just a baby, I had a friend of mine telling me this, and I'm like, where are you getting this? And she was telling me about how the United Nations was trying to, that they wanted to get the world down to $500 million at the time, I think. To get the world down to $500 million, divide it up into 3 sectors, and make one sector, what do you call it, like a national park, all protected land, can't do anything on it.
Something like that.
And then one section for the upper class, like the doctors and the lawyers and all that kind of stuff, scientists. And then 1/3 for the workmen, the basic workmen, like the people that work in McDonald's. Waiters. People that do, Hunger Games that they want, and the labormen. And then they were going to take their children away from them and train them and make them doctors, lawyers, and all the stuff like they do in the communist countries, which is where we're headed. We're headed towards communism, and then get rid of us. And they don't say how they're going to get rid of the lower class people, but they get rid of them. And then they're going to take that third where they used to live and turn that into a nature preserve.
Well,
and I said, where are you getting all this? I'm thinking she's completely paranoid. She said, it's in a book written by the UN. These are their plans. Are you serious? They've got this written down? Yeah. So, it's not just paranoia.
They're not going to win it, though. Oh. They're not going to get it because the book of Revelation shows that they don't.
No, but that's what they're trying to do.
But listen, the subject that we're talking about is a minimum wage as opposed to a competitive wage. And I'm just gonna do the logic in this. I want you to think about it. Okay. First of all, a competitive wage allows employees to compete with one another for a better wage by working harder, smarter, and being more efficient. It allows companies to raise their wages when they see another company is competing with them for employees.
Mhm.
In other words, when a company gives a competitive wage, or when you have a market of competitive wage,
Mhm.
companies end up competing for employees.
Yeah, and now small companies just almost don't have a chance at
Yeah.
all.
And when it's all about the minimum wage, and the minimum wage keeps on going up because the average person wants a higher wage,
And now they
and
have to provide
demands it.
insurance.
Yeah. Well, what ends up happening is small business is not able to compete.
Mhm.
It creates less jobs, and you have the high school kid or the college kid because, well, they built a machine that can do your job. You know, it doesn't take a whole lot of skill to say, "Welcome to McDonald's, what's your order?" Or, you know, "How may I help you?" You know, and at the end of the day, you have a higher unemployment rate. You watch. Within 5 years, unless Donald Trump opens the floodgates of industry, and it looks like he's going to with Shell and coal, but unless he opens the floodgates, there is not going to be a huge amount of jobs if he doesn't do something. You know, this whole job market that Obama supposedly created, even that's going to close up as big business grows and they build machines and everything else. Within the next 10 to 15 years, the job market is going to close for a lot of people without a skill set, and that's people coming right out of high school and right out of college if they didn't get the right education. So you need to understand that our demand for a higher wage is what's causing big business to look for an alternative to make more money by not employing us. So you know, we need to be wise in the things we do, and they have the right to do anything that they choose as far as, you know, within the means of the law to make money, you know. So we need to be wise about these things. At the end of the day, socialism, or, you know, a governmental society that decides what is fair for employers to pay
Fair for you.
their employees is a bad idea. It becomes slavery.
Yes.
It enslaves the business, and in turn enslaves the employee. So we need to be thinking about these things. But you know, Jesus says here at the last, verse 16, he says, "So the last shall be first, and the first last. For many be called, but few chosen." And what he's talking about here is basically the kingdom of God. And the whole of the text, believe it or not, is about how God had chosen Israel, and Israel had rejected him. But he had not only chosen, you know, the Gentile world had received the gospel. It was about to receive the gospel too. And he says, the first shall be last, and the last first, because Gentile world received the gospel and chose to believe that Jesus Christ is the Messiah. And so anyway, just a little bit about the minimum wage, and as opposed to a competitive wage. Just, you know, we see our country going towards socialism, and half of us want to be part of a labor union. Half of us want a government job because the benefits are better. You don't realize the increasing size of government has something to do with socialism. And the governmental control of business and government's hand in corporation is part of a fascist state of socialism. You don't realize that, and then you wonder, you're going around talking about socialism as if, oh, socialism's evil, and then you turn around and you, oh yeah, well, they need to be in control of this and they need to be in control of that. Has it ever dawned on you that when you say that, you're a socialist?
Yeah, eventually we need to post that clip, remember that cartoon 50 years ago?
Yeah,
about the isms.
About the isms, yeah.
Oh my heavens!
Yeah.
We'll
different mindset.
Yeah, we'll have to cut the beginning off of it, but it's on YouTube. We can share it. But it's really good.
You know, at the end of the day, we need to remember that our employers have the right to pay us what is right.
And just by reading that, you can see Jesus was not a socialist.
No, he's not. And that's really what we're trying to talk about is the
It's
fact
amazing
that
how
he
many
wasn't.
people say
uh,
that.
Yeah, I was talking to a pastor not long ago, and he said the early church was socialist. And I called him to the carpet on. I said, Jesus wasn't a socialist.
Yeah.
He said, no, Jesus wasn't. Jesus was a capitalist, but the early church was socialist, as if they weren't following what he said. And I know some of
Or
you,
somebody else
hold on,
would
I got to
say
say
something
this.
like that.
I know some of you over there are saying, well, what about the early church in Acts chapter 5? We'll explain all that later.
Yeah.
They weren't socialists.
Stick around.
Okay? They weren't.
I mean, come back.
You're misinterpreting
Don't
a lot.
stick around because we're leaving.
The reality is Jesus believed in a free market.
Mhm.
He was a capitalist. He did believe in paying taxes, just to avoid persecution. But he wasn't a socialist.
Well, speaking of free market, our director here is going to have my husband doing some taste tests
Yes.
probably next week and the next coming weeks. Just a little fun
Weird.
in the middle of what we're
Well,
doing.
it's supposed to be, how we determine
Yes.
phonies.
Difference between
Yeah.
the
What
name
we're
brand
gonna
and
do
the generic
is
brands. And
On our next episode, we're going
Gotta
to
do
do taste tests.
Miracle Whip versus regular man.
Excuse me.
I'm
We're going to
serious.
be doing taste tests between the generic and the real.
But you got to do Miracle Whip.
Because I do not need to do Miracle
Yes, you
Whip.
do, because I would be willing to bet you don't know the difference.
I probably don't anymore.
Dude,
but-
we gave you coffee.
Don't
We
even go
gave
there.
you
Don't
brown
even go
water
there.
with sugar, and you
Don't-
said it was good.
Don't even go there.
This is
Uh,
going to be good.
But
I'm already starting to
we're
tear
gonna
up,
be-
man.
we're going to be doing a taste test between generic and real products.
See if you
So-
can tell a difference.
No, it's not a matter of telling the difference. It's a matter of telling what tastes better. So,
Sure.
Like Great Value tastes better than Miracle Whip. That'd be fun.
Salad dressing. That's what I'm trying to say. Salad
Anyway.
Whip salad.
dressing. He won't know. I bet you.
You won't. We'll figure it out.
It's been so long since I've actually eaten mayonnaise.
Miracle Whip.
Dude, we have Miracle Whip in the fridge right now.
I don't use it.
Well, you
They
did buy
don't
it to
feed me
put.
that.
Okay. It goes. We bought
They
it to
don't-
put it on
listen.
the sandwiches for the homeless. He
You
really
can-
doesn't probably
can-
eat it.
You can tell they don't feed me. They don't feed me very much. But
Don't tell them that. They'll think I'm eating yours too.
Anyway, hey, like, share, and subscribe. I think I'm supposed to point down or something. I don't know.
Yes.
Gang signs here or something. Like, share, and subscribe. And God bless y'all. Catch you later.
Have a good
bye-bye.
week. God bless. And Happy New Year.
Amen.
All right. Now we got to push this. We are down to having to push buttons ourselves.
Boop.
Here we go.